Hello and welcome to another Shadowshaper Duels video. In today's video I'm going to be discussing the Cabal cards, similar to what I have previously done with the Fallen, Human and Hive. And I can already tell this is going to be quite a long video as there are a lot of Cabal cards to get through and a lot to discuss for them. So with the Cabal cards, there are essentially two completely different playstyles, which may as well be different decks with the Cabal units, as well as a few generic cards that you can use with either playstyle. So to start this video, I am actually going to discuss what those two different playstyles are before I explain what the cards are, as you do need to have an understanding of how the Cabal units work before understanding what each card specifically does. Those two different playstyles are Cabal lines and Cabal columns. So let's look at what they are. Cabal line cards are cards that need to be played on the same row next to other line units in order for their effect to function. So you can see here I have a card highlighted which says it needs a 3-unit line with a sustained effect. So as long as this card is in a 3-unit line, its effect will be active. However, if that line ever drops below 3, then its effect will stop working. And you can see here at the bottom, I have what is currently a 4-unit Cabal line. And line units are shown that they are part of a line by having this link icon in between them. Just as a small note, if your card has a sustained effect, you do not need to play it in a 3-unit line to begin with. You can play it when you have less than that. Its effect just won't be active, whatever that may be. However, as soon as the line meets that criteria, its effect will then become active. However, if you have a line card which has a when played effect, such as being able to attack, then your line must meet that criteria at the point you play the card. Otherwise, its effect is just lost. The card itself that you are playing will count towards the line count. So if you have a 3-unit line card with a when played effect, as long as you already have 2 line units down and you play that third card next to one of them, then that will make a 3-unit line and its effect will trigger. So the card itself that you are playing is still counted as part of the criteria. So that is a basic understanding of how line units work. Sorry, I should have also just said they only do count next to other line units. It is not just how many units you have in that row. They have to be other line units with the little chain icon. If you play it next to just a regular card, even though it's in the same row as them, it's not part of a line. Cabal column units effectively work in the opposite way, where you need to have cards on both your front row and your back row, and the cards that are above and below each other form a column. So you can see here I have 3 columns, and each column is again indicated with a little link icon in between them to show that they are forming a column. Now with column units, because you only have two rows to play on, there is no such criteria as must be part of a 4-unit column. That's just not possible. It is just, is this unit part of a column or not? So they are a little bit easier to play in the sense of you don't need to worry about meeting a threshold of units. You just need to make sure you have column units on both of your rows, and be very careful of playing other cards that are not column units and potentially misaligning the cards. Now there is a little extra piece with the column units, which is you may not always have the same number of units on both of your rows. However, they will still function. As you can see here, I only have 2 column units on my front row and 3 column units on my back row. And what they are doing instead is they are forming diagonally joined columns. So as long as there is a column card in front of them, whether that be fully in front of them or even only half in front of them, it is still treated as being part of a column. This does actually lead to a little bit of a more advanced playstyle with the column units, which is, without going into too much detail here and telling you what every card does, if you have a column unit which, for example, grants a power bonus to the unit in front of it, which is what I have here on my back row in the very middle, it will actually give that effect to both of the units in front of it, because they are technically both in front of it. So as you can see by the sort of green buff effect, the column unit on the back row is giving a buff to both the front left and front right column unit because they are both in front of it. So a bit counterintuitively, it is actually beneficial with column units to try and have a different number of units on each row, assuming you are playing cards which grant effects to the cards in front or behind, which most of them do, because it will effectively double up on that buff. However, that is a little bit more advanced, and you do have to be a bit more strategic with how you play to make sure you keep the cards like that. And obviously it may not always be possible if your opponent is attacking you and destroying cards. So now that we have a basic understanding of what a line and a column is, I'm going to go through each of the cards and give a quick explanation of them. I'm going to do the line units first, and then I will do the column units, as I think it'll be easier to follow if I discuss everything related to lines at the same time, and then column, instead of constantly switching between both play styles as I go through the cards. So you will see me skipping over certain cards initially, and then I will come back to them on the next round through. I'm going to start by discussing the exotic cards, because there are only 3 exotic Cabal cards, and all of them are round 6 cards. And each of the exotic cards effectively tells you the play style of that deck, and then I will go back to the level 1 cards and work my way through 1 to 5. So with the line units, there are actually 2 exotic cards for the line units. There is the Goliath tank, which is just essentially a slightly more powerful version of Ikora. It has the criteria of being in a 5-unit line, so you definitely do need to be focusing on Cabal line units if you want to play this as your exotic card. It has 10 health, and when played in a 5-unit line, it will deal 3 damage to all units in a row, which is essentially the same effect as Ikora, apart from Ikora only deals 2 damage. And just like Ikora, this tank can be buffed by other damage sources, such as a Servitor or even a Yumiko, and there is another Cabal card that I will discuss in a minute, which buffs the damage of just your Cabal units. So the damage on this tank can get quite high if you are stacking it with other damage effects. But even by itself, 3 damage is just better than Ikora. The only 2 real downsides compared to Ikora is the 5-unit line criteria, which may not always be possible if your cards have been being destroyed, whereas Ikora has no criteria, and the fact this card only has 10 health as opposed to 13. But it is still a very good final card, and certainly if you are building into a line deck, I would suggest it should be part of your deck. Maybe alongside an Ikora, just so you have a backup option if you want to include 2 exotic cards for round 6, and then pick which one is the best to play depending on your situation. The second Cabal line exotic is Thagrius, which is when played in a 6-unit line, so a even stricter criteria. It deals damage to a unit equal to double the number of line units. I'm going to be honest here and say I have never played this exotic card in serious gameplay. I have tried it once just to check its effect, and I've also never come across anybody playing it as a card. And to put it simply, I do not see a purpose of it. Obviously, it has to be played in a 6-unit line, so at a minimum, the damage it's going to deal is 12. If you have fully filled up your line and you have 7 units, then that will be 14 damage. There is a chance you have played line units on both your front and your back row and maybe have more than 7 units in a line. but that's very unlikely. But I just don't understand what the point of this card is. If your plan is to deal a lot of damage, or try and destroy a card, why would you not just play Wolf, which is only a level 3 card instead of a level 6 card? And obviously, to be part of a 6-unit line, you have to meet Wolf's criteria of having 5 units on the field. And although Wolf can only attack cards, I believe it's only over 5 health. Obviously, you're going to be dealing more than that anyway. So I think this card is just completely outclassed by Wolf. I don't know why you would try and use it, because there's just no need to have a card that does that much damage. If you really want to do that much damage, just use Wolf and instantly kill whatever you're attacking. So yeah, if you're going to pick one of the 2 Cabal exotic cards for a line, I would recommend go with the Goliath tank. I just don't see the point in Thagrius. So if you are going to use the Goliath tank, obviously your whole play style with line units should be try and get a big line, at least make sure you have 4 units down by the time you get to round 6, and then you can play this tank on round 6 in a 5-unit line. So now going to the energy level 1 cards, of which there are only 2 for the Cabal. 1 for the line units and 1 for the column units. The one for the line units, which is a mythic card, is when in a 3-unit line, your Cabal units deal 2 additional damage. But this is obviously a round 1 card. This is a very good card, and certainly I would say you probably should have 2 of them in your deck if you are going for a line unit deck. Now, when you initially play it on round 1, its effect will not be active, but because it is a sustained effect, when you make a 3-unit line, its effect will then become active. The only reason I say you probably want to play it on round 1 if you have it is that would then allow you on round 2 to play another line unit next to it, which possibly needs to be part of a 2-unit line so it can link up with this card. So yeah, if you are using a Cabal line deck, you probably want 2 of these. You should play one of them on round 1, and then you can start building your line from it. And as long as it stays alive, its effect will then become active. And this is a very good effect for buffing the Goliath tank. Because obviously the tank, unlike Ikora, is a Cabal unit, so it would take the tank's damage from 3 up to 5. You could even get it higher if you combine 2 of these or other effects like Servitors. Now if we move on to the level 2 cards. First we have the Centurion, which is another sustained effect. When played in a 4-unit line, it grants +2 power to the units on the left and the right. So you do want to make sure this is somewhere in the middle of your line. It has units on both sides of it. Personally, I always try and put it next to this card from round 1, just because it only has 1 health. So when it receives a +2 power bonus, just adds a little bit more survivability. And similar to the previous card I mentioned, when you initially play it, if you play it on round 2, its effect won't be active. But once you get up to a 4-unit line, its effect will then trigger. So you should still play it early, hope it stays alive, and then its effect will trigger later on. The next card, even though it is a legionary, is actually one of the better cards for the Cabal line. When played in a 2-unit line, it deals 3 damage to a unit, and you can pick that unit you're attacking. Now 3 damage is a decent amount of damage, especially for a card you can play on round 2. It is enough to destroy servitors that your opponent may have played. It is enough to destroy turrets or probably whatever card your opponent has played on round 1. If you're going first, it will basically kill it. So this is mainly the reason why I say if you have this card on round 1, you should play it, especially if you see you have a Scion in your deck, and if you're going first, because you can play this on round 1 to make the start of a line, and that means on round 2, when you play this Scion, it will be part of a 2-unit line, so you will be able to attack whatever your opponent has played. So especially if you are the player going first, a this card here, followed up by a Scion on round 2, is a very deadly combination. I say it basically just wipes out whatever your opponent has already played. I think the next units are columns. They are columns. This one is not either a column or a line unit. So the Incendior is just when played, it deals 3 damage to an opposing unit in the front row. It can only attack an opponent's card in the front row. So it's just a basic attacking card. Obviously, it's not part of either a line or a column, so you could include it in both of your decks if you want more attacking options, but it also will not, specifically for the line units, it will not contribute towards being in a line. So if you are including it, make sure you don't accidentally play it in the middle of your existing line and break it up. That's a column. And then this is another card I don't have. It is essentially just a weaker version of the Legendary Scion, and it is not a line unit. When played on the back row, it just allows you to deal 2 damage to an opposing unit. Again, a card that can attack for 2 damage, especially where you can pick what you're attacking, is not bad. 2 damage is enough to kill a Servitor, and a few other cards. It does, you could use it in both a line or a column deck. But just like the previous one I mentioned, the Incendio, it will not count towards the number of units in a line. So if you have this in and you're playing it on the back row, be very careful, or play your line units on the front row if you know you have back row attacking cards. So that's it for the round 2 cards. Moving on to round 3. I think this first one is again neither a line or a column unit. It is when played on the front row, it grants +2 power to a line unit. So although this card itself is not a line unit, its effect can only be given to other line units. I've not included one of them in my deck, as you can see, but it's not necessarily a bad card to consider having. Now, if you are going to include these, then you probably want to make your line on the back row, so that you play your non-line units on the front row. But just being able to give a power bonus is not bad. But I've not included one of them. So yeah, and as I said, although it itself is not a line unit, there is not really a point in playing this in a column deck because it can only grant its power to line units. Next, we have the Scorpius Turret, a card that some of you are probably already very aware of because it was very strong when it first came out. It is neither a line or a column unit, and it is just an effect, a sustained effect, where at the end of your turn, it will deal 1 damage to a random opposing unit. And obviously that can be buffed by things like a Servitor or the previously mentioned Cabal unit, which allows your Cabal units to deal 2 additional damage. What I would say with the turret is you probably want to play it on the opposite row to where you are making your line. So if you are playing your line units on the back row, you probably want to put the turret on the front row just so that it doesn't take up space from your other line units. This is a card that can be used in both column and line decks, but I do think it is a slightly better inclusion in a line deck because line units have this card that buff the damage of your other Cabal units, which obviously will affect the turret. I think the next one is this is a line unit. So the Phalanx is when played in a 3-unit line, your Cabal units take 1 less damage. Now this is a very good effect because it obviously increases your survivability. The one big risk to line units is the majority of your units are probably going to be on the same row. Obviously they have to be in a line. So you are at risk of attacks from things like Ikora, or indeed the Goliath tank if you come up against someone else playing line units. So having your units be able to take 1 less damage, that will apply to all of your Cabal units on the field. So obviously everything in the line, even things that are not in the line, as long as they are Cabal. If your opponent is going to attack you with Ikora, that's just instantly your attack is half as effective because it's only going to be 1 damage instead of 2. And you can, as with any legendary card, have up to 2 of them in your deck, so it is certainly not a bad idea to, if you're able, play 2 Phalanx in your line, which effectively makes it immune from Ikora, assuming your opponent isn't buffing her with something like a Servitor. But even then, even only having one of them, that can be the difference between your opponent doing enough damage to win the game or not. Obviously, depending on how the rest of the game has gone. So the Phalanx is a very good inclusion, a very strong effect, being able to reduce how much damage your units take. Next, we have the Incendior, which is another attacking card. When played in a 3-unit line, it deals 3 damage to an opposing unit, but it can only target the back row. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I do tend to find opponents play more cards usually on the back row than the front row. So that is probably where the cards that you want to attack are. And unlike the previously mentioned card I said on round 2, which was not a line unit, this is at least a line unit. So you can play it with your other line units to count towards that total, as well as being able to attack. The next one is a column unit. This is a line unit. So the drop pod, a similar card to things like the Ketch or the Tomb Ship. When played in a 2-unit line, it says here that it summons 2 random line units on the left and the right. At the moment, this card is only currently summoning 1 unit on the left, and I don't know whether that is a bug and it should be summoning a 2nd unit, or whether the description is just wrong. So just be aware, at the moment, it is only summoning 1 random line unit on the left. However, it is still a very good card to have because it has quite a low effect, low casting cost of only needing 2 units in a line. And it is a way of, getting 2 units down in a line. So especially if you have something like the Goliath tank and you need to make sure you have units down, maybe you've been attacked and some of your units have been destroyed, you can play this drop pod to just get 2 line units down. The drop pod itself will count as a line unit. And you may get lucky with what it summons. I've had it summon for me in the past a Phalanx, which obviously is good. It protects my line. I've had it summon one of these and give me more damage. It will only summon a line unit, so you have no risk of it summoning something like a Scorpius turret and breaking up your line. So yeah, the drop pod is a good inclusion, just for that scenario where you need to suddenly make more line units quickly, so that you can use a higher powered card that needs more units. And then the Gladiator, which is another card that is neither a line or a column unit. I don't have it at the moment. It is locked. It says a selected front row unit and the units to the left and the right deal 1 additional damage. I believe what this actually means is you will attack a unit and the units to its left and right for 1 damage each. So it's like a very weak version of I think it's Gwyn or the Heavy Shank, where it attacks 3 units next to each other. I say that because there is a mythic version of this card here, which I do have and I have used, and that has a similar behaviour. However, without having this card, I can't 100% confirm that, but I think what this actually does mean is it attacks 3 units for 1 damage each. So they are the level 3 cards. Moving on to the level 4 cards, there's not as many. There is this one here. When played in a 3-unit line, you deal 4 damage to a unit in the back row. So it is just a very strong attacking card. 4 damage is quite a lot of damage. And a 3-unit line isn't too bad, especially for a card that you would have only be able to play on round 4. This is a column unit. And then we finally have the Shinka Scorpius, a card, again, I don't have. There's not many Cabal cards I don't have, but this is one of them. It is just a better version of the legendary Scorpius. At the end of your turn, it deals 2 damage to a random opposing unit, so it is just a stronger attack. The main difference being that this is counted as a line unit, and it is a 3-line unit. By the time you're playing this on round 4, you should probably have a 3-unit line. And obviously, unlike the other turret, you will want to play this in your line so that it counts towards that. If you play this and it is not in a 3-unit line, then it will just not attack. I have seen some people tell me this card was not working. I believe they were just trying to play it like the other Scorpius turret and just thinking it can be played anywhere. It needs to be played in a 3-unit line with other Cabal line units before it attacks. Next, we have the level 5 cards, of which there are only 2 of them, one for the line, one for the column. The line unit is the Gladiator I just mentioned a few minutes ago. When played in a 5-unit line, so that is quite a high criteria, especially given this itself is a round 5 card. You basically need to have been playing line units every round. A selected unit and the units to its left and right deal 2 additional damage. Now, having played with this card, as I said before, what it actually means is you target one of your opponent's units and it will attack that unit and the units to its left and right for 2 damage each. So it can deal a total of 6 damage if you hit 3 different targets. So it is a, okay, quite strong attacking card. Obviously it also has 8 health, which is quite a lot and just a good score to have. So yeah, I've included one of these just because it's a round 5 card. So that is all of the line units and the sort of more generic units. I'm just going to very quickly explain my line deck, what my reasoning is for having certain cards in there. Now, I do think there would probably be a few changes I would make if I had some of these other cards that were locked. I think I may well include a Shinka Scorpius if I had access to it. And I may possibly include one of these Scions just to have a non-line attacking unit. But I think I would probably have swap out one of my Scorpius for a Shinka Scorpius if I had this card unlocked. But my line deck effectively consists of, I have 2 of the cards which allow my Cabal units to deal 2 additional damage. My hope is that I draw one of these on round 1, just to have something down, and then on round 2 I can play one of these Scions. If I can get the chance to play both of these, even better, because then my Cabal units will deal a lot more damage. I have 2 of the cards that grant +2 power to units on the left and right. Again, they are a very cheap card to play, so it's quite possible I get the chance to play both of them. By the end of the game, and they are very good for keeping other units alive. I will quite often try and put one of them on either side of these, just to take them up from 1 health to 5 health if they're buffed by both of them, just to try and keep them alive. I have 2 Scions because being able to attack for 3 damage is quite good. It can shut down quite a lot of cards. And yeah, my hope is always that I get one of these for round 1 and then one of these for round 2 so that I can attack whatever my opponent has played. I have 2 of the turrets just because if I may find an opportunity to play them usually on the opposite row to where I'm building my line, just to put some sort of sustained damage effect down. I do find that these turrets usually draw a lot of attention from your opponent. They usually either attack them or use Wu Ming to suppress them, which is fine. I would rather them use that on the turret than on my line cards. So they partly act as sort of a bait, but I mean, still doing 1 damage every round after it gets played is not a bad effect. Plus, when this card becomes active, the turret will deal for 3 damage instead of only 1. I have 2 drop pods, just so that if I need to get some line units down quickly, I can, drop more line units and reach that threshold. So that's mainly so that other effects will trigger. For example, if I need a 4-unit line here, an example saying I didn't have a Scion is play this on round 1, this on round 2. I only have a 2-unit line, play the drop pod on round 3, and all of a sudden I have a 4-unit line, which means obviously my Cabal units, when I then start playing them, deal additional damage, and this card also then becomes active, giving the power bonus. So the drop pods are there just to get more line units down if I need to. If I have other line units that I am able to play, I will usually prefer them over the drop pod, but the drop pod is there as a way of quickly getting more units down. I have 2 phalanxes, mainly for the reasons mentioned when I discussed this card. I like being able to protect my units in a line, especially from things like Ikora. The whole purpose of my line is most of my cards are going to be on the same row. So especially if I'm going second, I am very vulnerable to something like an Ikora or a tank. And if my line units get destroyed, then I may not be able to play my own tank on round 6. So having 1 or 2 of these phalanxes down will just increase my survivability. I have one of these incinerators just to have an attacking option. And again, the back row is usually where I find my opponents play more cards. It's there just to have another attacking option that is treated as a line unit. I have one of these gladiators just to have another attacking option for round 5. Or if I see that I have not drawn the tank and I'm getting up to round 5, I may actually save this card itself. Sorry, I didn't mean to remove it. I may actually save this card itself for round 6 if I've not had the tank, just to sort of my final play. Maybe even being able to pair it with something like this, where I play this first and then use this on the remaining 5 energy. But it's just there to have another attacking option, plus it has a lot of health at 8. And then finally, I have the Goliath tank as my hopeful round 6 card if I draw it, just to have a big attacking bonus. And hopefully I've been able to buff it with 1 or maybe even 2 of these other cards so that it deals either 5 or 7 damage. So they are the line units and my line deck. Without going into too much additional detail, because I do have some gameplay using this deck, which I will show after I've discussed the column cards. I do quite often see people playing line cards in a mixed deck. If you are not committing fully to the line units and trying to have a really big line and then play something like the Goliath tank on round 6, there are some line units that are just good in general. For example, having this unit and a Scion as your move for round 1 and 2 is not a bad play, even if you're not fully committing to line units. Or, if you have one of these and then maybe another way to get up to a 3-unit line, possibly with a drop pod, and then being able to play a turret, your turret will just deal more damage. So you can use small numbers of line units in combination with other cards. If you were to put together a really attacking focused deck, which its whole purpose of the deck is just to attack, then you might want to take some of these more powerful attacking line units, like the Scion, I'd say even the Scorpius turret, even though it's not a line unit, and then combine it with other things like a Servitor, maybe I think it's Yumiko, just to really buff your attacking options. And then you probably would have something like Ikora as your round 6 card instead of the tank, just because she does not need to be played in a line. So line units do have that flexibility that they can still work in a non fully line unit deck, as long as you are aware of what cards you have and make sure you keep your line units next to each other. So yeah, they are the line units. Now to move on to the column unit. Cabal column units have a much more passive play style than the line units and revolve mostly around giving your own cards power bonuses rather than attacking your opponent. And that is best shown by the exotic card for the column. There is only one of them. As I said before, there's 3 exotic cards and 2 of them are for line. The exotic card for Cabal column is Buhr, who, when played in a column, grants +3 power to all units in a column. So he's essentially the Cabal version of Vanok for the Fallen, with 1 more power being +3 instead of +2. Now, there is actually a little bug I have noticed with Buhr, and I'm just going to let a few clips play where you see him in action and this bug. And the bug is essentially if you play him as your left-hand side most card, he does not give the power bonus. It works if you play him in a completely vertical column, even on the left side. But if you have more cards in one row than another, and you play him on the left side, like he is the most left card, as in the only card next to him is either above or below him diagonally to the right, he does not give the power bonus for some reason. I assume that is probably something in the logic of how it checks if you are part of a column and it maybe isn't working correctly on the diagonal connections. But it's just something to be aware of. If you play Buhr, make sure you either play him in the middle or just play him on the right-hand side, because if you play him on the left, he might not give the power bonus, which obviously would be a huge disadvantage on your final round. So I'm just going to let those clips play, and then we'll come back to the column deck. So now that we have seen what Buhr can do, let's take a look at the rest of the column cards. Going back to power level 1, the column card is just when played in a column, the card gains +1 power. So this is as much as it is a rare card, it is a very easy inclusion in the deck because of only 1 energy cost. It's a good card just to be able to play if you have spare energy and make more column units. And plus the fact it gains +1 power for itself, it's not a weak card, it has 3 health. So yeah, that's the level 1 card for Cabal column. Moving on to energy level 2. The next one is the Shinka Legionary. A similar effect. When played in a column, it gains +2 power. You will see this is a theme for a lot of the Cabal cards. They all revolve around giving power. Cabal column cards, that is. So yeah, when played in a power, it gains +2 power. Sorry, when played in a column, it gains +2 power. We then have the Shinka Phalanx, which is, in my opinion, just a worse version of the Line Phalanx. When played in a column, the units directly in front or behind take 1 less damage. So it sounds like the same effect. However, this only applies to the units either in front or behind, obviously depending on whether you've played it on the front or the back row. That can be 2 units, as I mentioned earlier, if they are staggered, but it still does not apply to all of your units in a column. It only applies to the ones in that specific column, and it also doesn't apply to itself. So the phalanx itself could still be destroyed, and then obviously your other units are not protected. So if to at least have it on parity with the line units, I think it would be a bit better if this maybe was a 1 less damage for all of your column units, or at the very least it also took 1 less damage itself if it was part of a column. I understand column are a bit easier to play because you only need 2 cards to make a column, whereas you need more for a line. But yeah, this card is not as effective as the Line Phalanx. And then I think the remaining ones are just generic ones or line cards. Oh no, this is a column card. So instead of giving itself a power bonus, when it is in a column, it grants +2 power to the units directly in front or behind. So this is one of those cards where you want to try and have it staggered and make sure you have 2 units in front of it, because then it will give that +2 power bonus to both of the units in front of it. And actually, just something to be aware of, only one of those 2 units in front of it needs to be another column unit. As long as there is a column unit in front of it, it will be part of a column. But then if the other unit that is in front of it is not a column card, it will still give it the +2 power bonus because its effect is still triggered. So column units can buff non-column units as long as there is something in front of them that is classed as a column card. So yeah, if you're playing different number of cards in each row, you will see that in one of my game clips where I buff some cards on my front row that are not column units, because they are diagonally in front of one of my column units. And then we have the Scion, which I already discussed previously. Moving on to 3. This is a line card. This is the Scorpius, line phalanx, Incendio is line. The Colossus is a column card. It is basically a weaker version in terms of its effect of the card I just showed. However, it itself has more health. It grants the units directly in front or behind +1 power. So again, you want to try and have your line staggered so that he's giving +1 to 2 units. When we have the drop pod and the gladiator, which are other line units. Moving on to number 4. This is a line unit. This is the column. So this is one of very few column cards that actually revolves around damage. Units to the left and the right of this card deal 1 additional damage. Cabal units, that is, as long as this is in a column. So what you could possibly try and do is play this towards the edge of your deck, and then if you put something down like the Scorpius turret or one of the other, generic attacking cards that is neither a line or a column card, then they will deal damage. But it is still a weaker effect than the line one, which, if you remember, was your units gain +2 damage. I have got this card in my deck, but I'll be honest, I have very little success in playing it because there are so few column cards that actually revolve around dealing damage. Then we have the turret, which is line. And then moving on to the 5 cards. Unfortunately, this card is I don't yet have it, and I think if I had it, it would definitely be an inclusion in my deck. When part of a column, it grants +3 power, so that is quite a significant buff to the units on the left and the right. So it similar to how the line units buff the ones to the side of them, but obviously this needs to be in a column for that effect to trigger. But you are still likely to have columns to the column Cabal cards to the left and the right of this. So as long as you make sure you play it somewhere in the middle of your deck, it will grant +3 power to 2 different units. So yeah, if I had this card, I would definitely be including it in my deck, but I don't. The way you get this card, and in fact any card that is locked that you don't currently have, is if you just click on them, it tells you the source, and this is just a card that comes from the vendor, and I've not yet got lucky with my vendor selling it. But if I had it, it would definitely be included. And that is really it for the column cards. There are not that many of them. So I'm just going to quickly show you what I have in my deck and explain why it's there. But yeah, most of this deck revolves around buffing. So I have 2 of the rare cards, just because they are a way of, it's a column unit, and if I have spare energy on later rounds, I can always just use it to supplement what I'm playing. Or I may choose to not play them if I want to make sure I have an odd, a different number of cards on each row. So just being a 1 energy cost card that is a column card, that's why I've got 2 of them in. Then I have 2 of the card that grants +2 power to units directly in front or behind, because although itself only has 3 energy, if I can try and give this +2 to 2 different units, that is quite a nice power bonus. So I will often try and play them towards the middle of my deck so that I hopefully have 2 units in front or behind. I have the Shinka Legionary just because, again, it's a column unit and it gains power itself. And again, it's a cheap cost. I have 2 of the Phalanx, mainly just because, again, they are column units and they are cheap to play. And ultimately, I do want to try and have as many column units down as possible so that when I play Buhr on round 6, they get affected. Even though I am a little bit underwhelmed by their effect of, taking 1 less damage, because it is not as effective as the line Phalanx. I have 1 Incendio just to have an attacking card in my deck, because the column cards are really lacking in attacking options. So this card can be played on either the front or the back row, and I like having that flexibility. And yeah, it will deal 3 damage to an opposing unit in the front row. I might try and use that to maybe kill the servitor, something like that. I tend to find people like playing servitors on the front row and leaving the back row for attacking cards. And yeah, as long as this is in front, if I can get this in front of a different card like this, as long as it is a staggered deck, with maybe this card on the back row and then 2 in front of it, it can still receive the power bonus. I just don't want to play, multiple non-column cards next to each other. But as long as I alternate non-column cards with column cards, usually I can still trigger their effects. I have 2 of the Colossus, just because, again, they grant power bonus, and although it's not as big of a bonus, it's only +1 instead of +2, it does have 6 base health. So very similar. I will try and play them towards the middle of my deck, just so that hopefully they give that +1 to 2 different cards. I have 1 Scorpius turret in just because I wanted some attacking options. I don't often play it, to be honest, but if I have spare energy on the later rounds, I might put this down just to have some sort of attacking. But yeah, without any sort of damage bonus, dealing 1 damage is not that effective. And there is no other, whereas the line units have that one that makes it do +2 damage. Column don't have an option that is as good as that. I do have 2 of the Juggernauts because that is my damage buff. Cabal units to the left and the right deal 1 additional damage. So if I can, I may play the Scorpius turret on round 3 and then try and play this on the same row as it next to it on round 4. And hopefully, as long as this is part of a column, then it will be buffing the Scorpius turret. The other reason why I just have 2 of the Juggernauts, I'm not really that bothered about their attacking bonus. I just like that they have 8 health, and obviously they are a column card. So, yeah, they're a high power card, and they would still class as being part of a column. So maybe on round 5, for example, I have the energy to play 1 of these and then 1 of these Legionaries. To be honest, if I had the card, I would probably be swapping out 1 or maybe both of these Juggernauts with 2 of these Centurions, because I would rather get a power bonus than a damage bonus. But I don't have it, and to be honest, there are not that many column cards. I have unlocked most of the Cabal cards, and I don't think there is enough to make a full deck using nothing but column units. You need a few non-column units in there just to have enough cards. Well, actually, if you had this unlocked, I could include 2 of these instead. But yeah, there are not. The Cabal column don't seem to have as many options. And then yeah, I have 1 Buhr just because I hopefully have a good number of column units down, and then I play Buhr to buff them all. What you will see in the game clips that I'm going to show, I talk about it in a few of those clips. I want to try and finish round 5 with having the same number of units on both rows, so that when I play Buhr on round 6, he obviously makes that a different number of units and staggers my rows, so that these cards that grant bonuses, in front or behind, trigger to multiple cards. Whereas if I go into round 6 having an odd number on each row, then when I play Buhr, it's going to make them balanced again. Obviously, that's not always feasible. Your opponent may destroy cards. You can't always metagame it that much, but it is a strategy to think of. So yeah, they are the column cards and my column deck. I'm now going to let the gameplay clips run. I have some line gameplay and then some column gameplay, and then finally we'll come back at the end for my final thoughts. Against a level 28 using my Cabal line deck, and I'm going second. Okay, I don't see my round 1 unit, so we'll just have to skip. Let's play 1 of these. At least on my next turn I can then use the Scion to attack. Unfortunately, I think the Hex Guard will have got too high by then, and I won't be able to kill it. Definitely will have got too high. But I can kill Finala. No sign of the tank yet, but at least I do have this unit, which, is a sort of alternative. Okay, he's going to find a way to buff that ogre and make it attack, so I think I now need to prioritise. Yeah, let's put this down so that my Cabal units take 1 less damage. That completely will nullify this Ogre's attack. And then I'm going to play this as well, and I'm going to play it here next to this unit so that it also receives the bonus health. Because I want this to stay alive so that my units deal more damage when I play them. But yeah, if he finds a way to inspire that Ogre now, it only attacks for 1 damage. This Phalanx will cancel it out. So even though the Ogre attacks twice, it's completely pointless. The Phalanx cancels it out. There's the tank, that's great. I already have a 4 unit line. So I'm going to actually just play this to get some more power. And then I think my tank is going to attack the front row. And it will deal more damage. So I think I'm just going to snipe the Hex Guard at the back. Just because, you know, I said my tank's already going to attack the front row. I may as well just attack the back row. I could have actually killed this Ogre, think about it, but oh well. Okay, he has 3 Inspired Hive. So now what row do I actually attack? I think I attack the back row because this will deal 3, then it will add 2, so it will deal 5. If I attack the front row, it's a waste because this only has 3 health. At least if I attack the back row, that's 15 damage it's going to do. Yeah, and I just about win. Close game though. Against level 29 using my Cabal line deck, and I'm going second. I'm going to have to skip my first turn because I don't have any units, but I do like that I've already found the tank. So at least I know I have my play for round 6. I now just need to make a line. I'm going to copy him and play the same because I don't think he has any way to kill it on the next turn. Unfortunately, this card, it's not pointless actually because it will attack the back row and he is playing in the back row. Okay, he did have a way to kill it. I didn't think that he would have both of those. Let's play a drop pod just because I need to get some units down. Just to start making a line. I think on my next turn, I use this to kill this unit, just because I don't want his units dealing extra damage. Yeah, it will still kill it, because it does 3 damage. And so let's play this in a 3 unit line, kill that, which will also get rid of his power bonus, because he's no longer got a 4 unit line. I'm going to have to assume he has the tank as well. Yeah, and there we, well, that's lucky. He just found the tank. I mean, it's not attacking, but it's a high health card. And I'm now back to a 2 unit line. Okay. So I'm going to have to play 2 units this time, because then at least I will have a 5 unit line. I want to play the Phalanx because at least then I will take less damage from his tank. So I think the logical play, there's no point me attacking him. I can't kill, like, even if I kill 2 of his units, he will still have a 5 unit line. So I think I play the Phalanx to take less damage, and I play this to buff my power. And now there is a chance I survive the attack from the tank. He hasn't actually played the card that increases his attack damage, so it only attacks for 2. I have also not played the same card, but he doesn't have a phalanx. So now when I play mine, it's going to attack for 3. I'll be honest, I still don't think it's going to do enough, but let's see. No, very close. And you know what? Had he not got the tank from the drop pod with such high health, that would have been the difference. So yeah, very close match. I'll give him a well played. He said it to me. I've just matched against a level 28 using my Cabal line deck, and I'm going first. So because I'm going first, I'm going to play this because there's no card they can play on round 1 that will destroy it. And now ideally I would have liked to play my Scion to attack something, but they've, I guess very wisely, not played anything. So I'm going to play the Centurion. Okay, that's fine. It's a bit of a shame, but that's fine. So now I'm going to use my Scion to attack Wu Ming. I'm also going to play my other one of these to the side of the Scion. Actually, I made a mistake. I was meant to put that in here because I wanted him to buff this to try and keep it alive. That was a mistake on my part. I put it in the wrong place. But it's okay. So I already see I have the tank, which will do a lot of damage. There's nothing in the back row, so that is pointless. If I play this, I'm nearly filling up my line, and I already have a 4-unit line. So let's actually drop the turret. The turret will at least be buffed by this, so it will hit for 3 damage. Yeah. I know at least if he has something else like another Wu Ming or an attacking card, he's more likely to attack the turret and not this. Okay, good combination. Stops me, well, whatever row I play something on, it's going to take damage. I could use this and attack, but it would kill Ayuela, but it wouldn't kill the grenade dragger, then I'd take damage. I think I'm going to expect that he has some attacking cards. So let's play my phalanx just to try and keep my units alive. Obviously the phalanx now only takes 1 damage off the grenade drag because of that being weaker. He has another grenade drag and another Ayuela. Okay. I'm just going to play my tank on the back row and attack that back row. It'll kill Ayuela, it won't kill the grenade dregs, but at least when they shoot back, I'll take less damage. Yeah, I'm only taking 1 off each of them thanks to the phalanx. It was definitely a smart idea of me to play that phalanx. And I only take 1 damage off Ikora because of the phalanx, and I end up drawing because of the inspired hive. But yeah, the phalanx was a great counter to Ikora's attack. Good game. Against level 30 using my Cabal column deck. I'm going second. I at least see my exotic card this time, which is a good sign. So now that I know I have this card, what I want to try and do is keep the same number of units on both rows, and then when I play this card, it will stagger the rows. I probably should have played this while it cost 3 energy. Oh well. Mistake. Yeah. Okay. Let's play the phalanx here. I've played these in not the smartest way because I've got my 2 units that give buffs on the ends, so they're not going to be able to interact with 2 of them. Yeah, I've not done this in the best way. I can still make it work. I just need to play Buhr on my front row next time. Although there's a chance that Ogre is going to kill some of my units. Ogre's going to attack twice. Yeah, 2 of my units on the front row are dead. That's not good. So now I'll play Buhr on the front row to at least stagger it, and I've got quite a lot of columns, but I don't think I'm going to get enough score. Nowhere near. No. Well played. Just matched against another level 30, and I'm using my Cabal column deck. At the moment I don't have any energy 1 cards, so let's see if I draw one when it becomes my turn. If not, I'm going to have to skip on turn 1. My opponent is taking an annoyingly long time to make his first move. I'm going to have to skip. I don't have any cards I can play, but I at least see I've got Buhr, so I know, what I'm working towards. I'm trying to get my column units together. So yeah, let's play both of these units now. I can only play one. I'll play this guy first. I'll play something with him next turn. Okay, let's play this level 3 unit, make my first column. So given I know I have Buhr, I want to try and keep the same number of units in each of my columns, and then on round 6 when I play him, it will make they'll be diagonally connected. So let's think ahead. I've got round 4 and round 5. So on round 5, I could play these 2 together. So on this round, I want to play 2 of my level 2 units together. So let's just play this guy here and play this guy in front of him. That's annoying. He's playing rocks, so that's really going to mess up my columns. Oh, he's playing another one. Okay, that's annoying. I think I'm going to just probably need to play most of my Cabal units on the back row here, given the rocks. I can play the 3, the 1, and the 1. What does this do? So if I play the 3 here, and I play the 1, then they're in a column, and I think I just have to I'm going to play this in the middle of the rock as well, hopefully, if I make the front row too. But if I play it here, yeah, I think that'll work. And then when I play Buhr on the back row, it should be okay. Interesting that he's gone down this route. He's probably set this deck up designed to counter Cabal columns. And he's playing a Stella. It's a very good final move. So now if I play Buhr on my back row, it will stagger them. So all of my Cabal units will still thankfully be in a column. Oh no, yeah, maybe not this last guy here, because Buhr himself needs to be in a column. So if I play him on the left, yeah, I have one unit that's not in a column. I should have put that legionary in between the rocks. I just thought he was going to make more rocks. So let's see. But that's still a really big power bonus off Buhr. So good game in the end. And he gave me a lot to think about with those rocks. So now we have watched those game clips, I just want to give my final, very quick closing thoughts on the Cabal cards. Starting with the Cabal line units, personally I think line units are the stronger deck as opposed to the column units. It's certainly where I have had the most success, and I do see a lot more people running line units than I do column units. I think the line units is certainly a more attacking playstyle. They have a lot more cards focused around attacking. I mean, their exotic card itself is an attacking card. And attacking playstyles do tend to be quite good, especially if you get to go first. I have found it's a little bit more difficult to use them if you go second, especially if you're matching someone who also has an attacking playstyle, because if your line units are constantly being destroyed, it can be a bit more difficult to keep units alive and actually build up a good enough line that your unit's effects get triggered. So that is, I guess, the one weakness to the line units. If you are constantly having units destroyed, it can be difficult to trigger their effects. But certainly if you are the person who's going first, or if your opponent is not as attacking, line units can be quite strong. I have also seen people running the combination of a Decurion and a Scion in other decks that don't even have other line units in, just because it is a good attacking option. And you know, if they also maybe have a Scorpius in their deck, they will try and get up to a 3-unit line with maybe 1 or 2 of these, 2 Scions and a turret, just to have attacking options. And then they won't even run the remaining deck as line cards. They may just have Ikora, they may have Gwyn and other attacking options, and that is certainly a viable playstyle if you want to mix things up. I would say the two main weaknesses to the line deck is you are making yourself very vulnerable to something like an Ikora attack or even another Goliath tank attack, because most of your units will be on the same line. But that's where trying to get 1 or 2 phalanx in your deck is sort of the counter to that. And then you do need to think, which line are you going to play your units on? You know, if you play them on the back row, that is where I see most people do it, and is probably the safer row. However, you are then vulnerable to cards that attack the back row. For example, grenade dregs. You know, if your opponent sees you making a line on the back row, they may have cards that can purposely target the back row. And it also does mean that you have less space to play non-Cabal cards that you may want to include. For example, if you considered putting a Wu Ming in your deck to have a suppressing option, he must be played on the back row, so that's taking up space that would otherwise be used for line cards. If you play your line on the front row so that you leave your back row available for other cards such as Wu Ming, then you do run the risk of potentially having your Cabal line broken up if your opponent is using a rock playstyle. Because if they can drop rocks on your front row and break up your line, it can make it, you know, impossible for you to get a line of any substantial length. Which is why I think most people play the line on the back row, just so it avoids that playstyle. But yeah, it does take up space there. You know, you can't play other non-line cards on your back row. I do think with both line and Cabal, if you are going to run them, you probably are best off just going fully invested in them and having a full Cabal deck that revolves around that playstyle. Now for the column units. To be honest, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the column deck, but before I started using it, I actually quite liked the theory of it. The column deck is probably a little bit easier to use in the sense of you don't need to worry about how many units you have in a certain place. You can just keep playing them, and build up how many units you've got over time on both rows. It does have that flexibility that you can play on both rows, meaning if your opponent has put something down like a grenade drag or an Ayuela, you can temporarily shift which line you are placing your cards on until they expire, and then make up the remaining units on the other line. And yeah, there can be some synergy with playing column units with non-column units, as long as you can sort of integrate them in the deck and make sure that you have it, your rows staggered, and there is always at least one unit in front and behind that is a column, along with a non-column unit. I think the biggest problem with the column units is it's really lacking in any sort of strong attacking options, even though it has a card that will buff your attacking damage. And the Phalanx is just a worse version. So it's a very passive playstyle and really does not have any kind of aggressive counters or way to shut your opponents down if they are attacking you. I think if it had a few more attacking options, it might be a bit more viable. So yeah, I personally have more success with the line than with the column, but that's not to say you can't make a column deck work. You just have to, I guess, hope your opponent is not playing a very aggressive play style, because if they are, you have very little ways of shutting them down. And obviously, if they destroy your cards, then you have less to buff at the end with your exotic card. I am just going to now close this out by playing one final clip, which is from a Cabal gameplay I recorded where there is no commentary. It starts on round 5, and at that point I am currently in the lead, but I want to show you how quickly I go from being in the lead to not being in the lead by my opponent playing a Sniper Vandal. And this is sort of a really big flaw with the Cabal column gameplay, is that it fully revolves around giving your own units a buff. Practically every card you play is going to cause some sort of change in your units being buffed, because it is shifting how many cards are in each row. Those cards may be giving a buff themselves. So something like a Sniper Vandal can very quickly shut down an entire Cabal column deck, just because they will attack every time your unit receives a buff. So I'm just going to close out with that gameplay.